workplace safety. We hear about it all the time, and as responsible employees, we strive to stay safe and injury-free by doing our jobs according to procedures, following safety rules, and being responsible for our personal safety. When an injury at work does happen, we know a proper investigation can reveal the root cause of that injury, and ways to prevent similar incidents can be devised and implemented to improve the overall safety of our workplace. But there is something else we need to do. There is another source we can study that provides critical information for improving our safety program: close calls and near misses. In this program, we will look at several close call incidents which reinforce important safety principles and show how reporting and studying near-miss incidents can help prevent injuries. Of course, in order to learn from close calls, the incidents must be reported and investigated. Employees need to understand the purpose of studying near misses is not to punish employees or assign blame. The purpose is to improve workplace safety and reduce injuries. As we will learn during this program, reporting close calls leads to improvements in job procedures and work areas and allows the correction of unsafe conditions or actions before an injury occurs. However, as our first example demonstrates, failing to report even a small incident allows hazards to escalate into more serious situations. A fork truck driver backs into a storage rack, pushing the rack into the aisleway on the other side. Luckily, the rack did not tip over onto nearby workers. Unfortunately, this close call went unreported. Troy Lodeholt handles materials as they arrive at the facility. He takes pallets of material and places them into storage areas. While moving a load of materials which obstruct his vision, Troy collides with the storage rack that was protruding into the aisleway. Since no one noticed the incident and no apparent damage was done, Troy continued working and left at the end of his shift without reporting the incident.
Since I didn't see any damage and no one was looking, I didn't report it. No harm, no foul, you know?
Troy didn't realize the collision had punctured a container of lubricating fluid inside the boxes. And by the time the next shift arrived, the fluid had made its way into the aisleway.
I didn't see the spill until I'd walked right through it. I almost lost my balance and fell, but I didn't. Anyway, I was on my way to another area. I was in a hurry. Besides, I thought somebody else would clean it up. That's not my job.
At this point, 3 close calls had gone unreported, and it was just a matter of time before another incident occurred. A fork truck, traveling too fast, swerves to avoid the rack and runs through the spilled lubricant. Sliding on the slippery floor, the fork truck narrowly misses a group of workers. This close call, which could easily have been a fatality, was reported and an investigation was begun. The near-miss investigation revealed several contributing factors. Unsafe forklift operation contributed in 2 ways. Backing without checking behind the forklift contributed to hitting the rack. Exceeding safe operating speed contributed to swerving around the rack and into the fluid. Traveling with an obstructed view contributed to the collision between the pallet jack and the storage rack. Not paying attention while walking, combined with being in a hurry, contributed to Frank's near slip and fall. Finally, not reporting any of the 3 smaller incidents contributed to an escalation of hazards that resulted in the final incident. Had the forklift operator reported backing into the rack, it would have been discovered that the rack was pushed into the aisle and would have been corrected. Had the material handler reported colliding with the rack, the containers would have been inspected for damage and the leak discovered. Finally, had Frank reported his near slip and fall, the spill would have been marked off and cleaned up properly. Here are some other safety lessons we can learn from this incident. When operating moving equipment such as fork trucks, work platforms, pallet jacks, and other similar items, make sure your vision is not blocked by the load. You never know when you may encounter an unexpected hazard or pedestrian. Always operate moving equipment at safe speeds to avoid sudden turns or quick stops. When backing, make sure you have a clear view of what's behind you to avoid backing into objects or people. Be aware of dangerous areas and watch for tripping or slipping hazards. Never run while at work. Take your time when traveling through the facility to be sure you arrive safely at your destination. When safety hazards or unsafe conditions are discovered, correct or report them immediately. Don't put others at risk by assuming someone else will do it. Be part of the solution,
I thought somebody else would clean it up. That's not my job.
not part of the problem. Finally, report any close call or near-miss incidents you may encounter. As our next example illustrates, the lessons learned from your experience may prevent more serious situations. Scott Ryman handles and loads rolled steel into the feed line. The steel has sharp edges, and when handling it, Scott is required to wear heavy cloth gloves as well as forearm guards. After the steel is loaded in place, it is then fed into the roller. It is important to keep hands, fingers, and loose clothing away from the rollers. Getting caught in the rollers would cause major injury. After loading the roll into the holder, Scott tried to feed it into the line as required. He was having trouble getting the steel started into the feeder. It seemed the machine was out of alignment.
I was trying to keep the line moving. We had to finish the run before we could go home, and I didn't want to waste time by calling maintenance. It was my job to get it started.
Thinking he could get it started quicker by hand, he pulled the steel toward the rollers. Trying to achieve better leverage, he climbed onto the side of the conveyor to get a better grip on the steel.
I was getting mad and frustrated. It didn't seem to be feeding correctly, and I was determined to make it work.
Scott was so concerned with feeding the steel, he neglected his own safety. Failing to notice the apron he was wearing had come untied, he moved the steel closer and closer to the rollers. Finally achieving his goal, the steel and the apron entered the feed rolls.
As soon as it grabbed onto my apron, it immediately pulled me right down towards the rollers. So I ducked my head down, and I grabbed onto it, and I pulled back on hard as I could. And the apron, it just went right over my head, and I got loose. It started feeding again, and my apron was gone. But I'm telling you, it really scared me.
The near-miss investigation revealed several contributing factors. The conveyor was misaligned with the rollers, making it hard to feed the steel. This condition contributed to Scott's frustration, prompting him to force feed the steel by hand. Scott let his emotions overcome his good judgment about personal safety. Becoming angry and frustrated contributed to his poor decision to climb onto the conveyor and attempt to hand feed the steel into the rollers. His actions violated two of his company's safe work procedures. Wearing an apron near the moving machinery contributed the final piece to a nearly fatal situation. We can all learn the following safety lessons from this incident. If the equipment you are operating is not working correctly, follow your company's procedures to have it adjusted or repaired. Never try to make it work by performing unsafe acts such as defeating guarding, climbing onto or into machines, or placing your hands near moving parts. If you are qualified to service the machine, perform all steps in the required lockout-tagout procedure before beginning any repair. If you are not qualified to service the equipment, report the situation to your supervisor so proper maintenance can be performed. If material needs to be loaded into moving parts or if jams need to be cleared, using assist devices keeps hands clear of moving parts. When working around rollers, gears, belts, or other pinch points, remove any loose articles of clothing that may become entangled and keep long hair pulled back and restrained. Finally, remember that staying safe at work is your responsibility. Don't let emotions tempt you into an unsafe act. The investigation also led to improvements of facilities and job procedures. A maintenance procedure now requires adjusting the feed rollers monthly to prevent future problems. The use of aprons is now prohibited on any job within 10 feet of the conveyor system, and shirts are required to be tucked in at all times.
I considered not reporting my incident. But if someone else had gotten hurt on those rollers. As it turns out, by reporting my close call, changes were made that might prevent someone else from getting hurt. And I feel good about that.
Reporting close calls leads to improving the overall safety of our workplace. As illustrated by our next example, no matter how simple a close call may seem, even if you think nothing can be learned from it, reporting the incident can lead to improvements you may not have considered. Tom Riggs works in the receiving area. This area is always busy with packages being unloaded, opened, and unpacked onto pallets. Workers in this area use knives to assist in opening the boxes. These knives are sharp and can cause deep lacerations when used incorrectly.
I was trying to stay caught up with the guys unloading the shipment. My knife was starting to get dull, and I really had to apply a lot of force to get it to cut. I really needed a new blade, but I didn't want to go all the way across the plant to the tool room. And I didn't want the shipment to get backed up.
Rather than get a new knife or change blades as required, Tom continued to use the dull blade so he could keep up with the flow of boxes. As is often the case, he added to the danger by performing another unsafe act.
On this one box, I was really having a hard time. So I decided to pull the knife towards me so I could apply more force, you know? The knife slipped out of the box and just grazed my arm, cutting my jacket. It's a miracle I wasn't badly cut.
Although the cause of the incident seems clear, the investigation found some interesting contributing factors. Tom was having trouble keeping up as the boxes were being unloaded because he had to both open and unpack each box. Falling behind contributed to Tom's feeling rushed. Feeling rushed, combined with the faraway location of the tool room, contributed to Tom's poor decision not to change blades. The difficulty of cutting with a dull blade contributed to Tom using an unsafe cutting technique. We can learn a few simple safety lessons from this incident. When working with any type of cutting tool, the blade must be kept sharp and in good working condition. When cutting, always cut away from your body. This protects you in the event the tool or blade slips or breaks. Don't allow a poor attitude or being in a hurry to override your commitment to personal safety. No matter how simple a near miss seems, reporting it can lead to changes in your job procedures or improvements to your work area, making your job easier and safer. After the investigation was completed, the company began storing frequently used tools and supplies, such as knife blades, closer to work areas so they could be accessed easily. When unloading large shipments, 2 employees are now used to open and unpack the boxes. One employee cuts open the box, and the other employee unloads it. This reduces the need to hurry while cutting with a knife. As our next incident demonstrates, another benefit of reporting close calls is drawing attention to actions that aren't currently recognized as being unsafe. Statistics tell us most injuries are caused by the unsafe acts of employees, but when asked, most employees say they don't commit unsafe acts. This discrepancy shows that more attention needs to be placed on recognizing unsafe acts before an injury takes place. Workers on this assembly line perform many different tasks during the day. Some tasks require repetitive motion or heavy lifting. To reduce fatigue and strain, employees change work assignments several times during each day.
To move from one workstation to the next requires a long walk around the conveyors. Most of the time, the place you need to go was just on the other side of the line.
Many employees have become accustomed to crossing the conveyor by climbing over it rather than walking to the nearest approved crossover.
Everyone was doing it, so I thought it was okay. Looking back, it seems stupid, but at the time, no one considered it dangerous. It was just part of the everyday routine. Besides, the shift supervisor saw us do it.
Becoming complacent around hazards in our work area is a real threat to our safety, as Rhonda soon discovered. Attempting to cross the line by standing on the non-moving side rails, she lost her balance and fell hard onto the rollers. An alert coworker hit the emergency stop button, shutting down the conveyor. Rhonda was helped off the line with no serious injury. The investigation discovered the following contributing factors. Failing to enforce the company's rules against crossing the conveyor, the shift supervisor contributed to the employees engaging in unsafe behavior. Repeating the unsafe act without incident contributed to the employees becoming complacent about the danger of the moving conveyor. The failure of both supervisors and employees to recognize the shortcut as being unsafe contributed to it becoming a standard part of the work routine. Some valuable safety lessons can be learned from this incident. Supervisors must enforce the company's safety policies. Unenforced safety rules don't help anyone and lead to an escalation of unsafe acts. Employees must learn to recognize and avoid unsafe acts. As a result of the investigation, the company is adding additional conveyor crossings at locations more convenient to employees' workstations. the incidents in this program have reinforced some basic safety principles we must always follow. Being in a hurry or becoming angry tempts you to commit unsafe acts. Don't succumb to the temptation. No matter what job you do, it takes just one moment of carelessness to create a dangerous situation. Don't let unsafe acts slip into your work routine. Take a moment to consider the safety of every action you take and avoid becoming complacent about the hazards of your work area. If unsafe conditions are discovered, correct or report the situation right away. Don't allow a poor attitude to place other workers at risk. Perhaps most importantly, we have shown how reporting close calls and near-miss incidents can improve your work facilities and job procedures, helping to create a safer, more productive workplace for everyone. Reporting incidents can lead to much-needed maintenance on machines or equipment, change the way a job is performed, or improve the location where tools are stored. Close call investigations may lead to engineering changes, such as adding a crossover to a conveyor, a guard to a machine, or a mirror at an intersection. And finally, reporting near-miss incidents identifies unsafe acts or procedures which need to be corrected. Some companies have an elaborate system for investigating and tracking close calls, while other companies may use a simpler approach. No matter what system your company uses, one thing is always the same. It won't work without your participation. It takes everyone participating and supporting our safety programs, including close call investigation, to achieve our goal to be injury-free. Thank you.